Hi and welcome to ExtraSci. This is Life Sciences Grade 10. Still in Module 1 looking at life at a molecular, cellular and tissue level, we now move over to Unit 4, Plants and Animal Tissues. Under this unit, we're looking at plant tissues, animal tissues and the application of biotechnology. Starting off with plant tissues. What are plant tissues? Tissues are groups of similar cells that are structurally adapted to perform specific functions. These cells have been differentiated in the same way and will perform the same function. Plant tissues are divided into two. There is meristematic tissue and permanent tissue. Meristematic tissue are non-differentiated cells that are continuously dividing, and permanent tissue are differentiated cells that have specific functions. Under this section, we'll be looking at meristematic tissue, permanent tissue, and vascular tissue. So let us now look at meristematic tissue, starting off with apical meristem. There are two types of meristematic tissue, apical and lateral meristem. Apical meristem consists of tissues found in the tips of the roots and stems. Their cells are small with thin cell wall and a cubed shape. These tissues are responsible for growth in length by mitosis. So as you can see, they are found in the tips of the roots and they allow the roots to grow longer by mitosis. Lateral meristem consists of tissue found between the xylem and the phloem. The xylem and phloem are permanent vascular tissues. These tissues are responsible for growth in thickness of the stem. The lateral meristem tissues are responsible for growth in thickness of the stem. Their cells are similar to the apical meristem cells but are flatter, longer, and have thicker cell walls. So under meristematic tissue, at first we have apical meristem found at the roots and are responsible for growth in length. Then we have lateral meristem, which are found in the stems and are responsible for growth in thickness. Then we move over to the permanent tissues. Permanent tissues include the epidermis, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and the vascular tissues, which are the xylem and phloem. Starting off with the epidermis. The epidermis cells are brick-shaped, transparent, and are arranged into single layers covered by a cuticle. The cuticle is a waterproof waxy layer. The cuticle prevents water loss and is transparent, allowing sunlight through for photosynthesis. The epidermis protects the underlying tissue from injury and desiccation, which is also known as drying out. It was said that the cuticle is waterproof and is a waxy layer. Thus, it is able to prevent desiccation because it is waterproof, so the plant will not dry out because water cannot escape the cuticle. The epidermis can also be modified into root hairs or the gut cells of a stoma. The root hairs are unicellular, which means they are only one cell. They have thin-walled outgrowths of roots. These are our root hairs and these are our gut cells for the stoma. The root hairs increase the absorption area of roots for water and mineral salts. They have no cuticle, so they are not waterproof, so they can easily absorb water into the roots. They can also absorb the mineral salts. The gut cells are evenly thick with stomatal pores and they occur in the leaves. The stomatal pores are the openings between two pin-shaped gut cells. These are our two pin-shaped gut cells, and here we have our opening, which is called the stomatal pore. It opens and closes by the gut cells, allowing for gaseous exchange. Gaseous exchange is the intake and expulsion of oxygen or carbon dioxide. Humans during gaseous exchange take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, whereas plants in gaseous exchange take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. The gaseous exchange in plants is through the stomatal pore. Our second permanent tissue is the parenchyma. Parenchyma cells are large with thin cell walls and have air spaces in between them, and they contain large vacuoles. As you can see, there are spaces in between these cells. These are known as air spaces. They store water and produce carbohydrates during photosynthesis. Carbohydrates is food for the plant. The vacuole exerts turgor pressure, providing a rigid shape. It was said that they contain large vacuoles. These vacuoles exert turgor pressure, giving them their rigid shape. The air spaces allow for gaseous exchange. So we saw that the stomatal pore was allowing for gaseous exchange. The carbon dioxide is taken in here through the stomatal pore and will move through the parenchyma through the air spaces. Then we move over to the sclerenchyma. The sclerenchyma cells are more or less round in shape. So they look round but can be irregularly shaped or oval in shape. They have small lumen and are evenly thickened around their cell walls. So these openings here are called lumen. These are very small lumen and they have very thick walls. As you can see that the cell walls here are very thick. They are found in the leaves, stem, and the fruit. They serve as strengthening tissue and providing mechanical or physical support and strength to the plant. So the sclerenchyma, which is found in the leaves, stem, and fruits, provides them with strength. It provides them with the physical support so that the leaves and the stems do not fall apart, so that our fruits have a very rigid and strong shape. Then we have the collenchyma. The collenchyma cells are not round as their cell walls are unevenly thickened with most thickness around their corners. As you can see, these are not very round. It is said that they have most thickness around their corners. They are found in the stem of young or growing herbaceous plants, or you can just call them herbs. So these collenchyma are found in the young herbs. They serve as strengthening tissue, providing mechanical and physical support, strengthening the plant, just like our sclerenchyma. The only difference between sclerenchyma is that the sclerenchyma are found in leaves, stem, and fruits, whereas our collenchyma is found in the young herbs or the growing herbaceous plants. They both serve as strengthening tissue, providing mechanical and physical support, strengthening the plant. Then we move over to our vascular tissues. Our vascular tissues are xylem and phloem. They are also known as vascular bundles. As you can see here, there is our xylem over there and there is our phloem. And here there is our xylem and there is our phloem. Looking at them, you can compare them to blood vessels or just straws. Xylem and phloem are complex permanent tissues. They fall under vascular tissues. Remember that simple permanent tissues are made up of cells that are the same. It has been said that they are not differentiated, so they all look the same. The complex permanent tissues are made up of different cells that combine to perform the same function. So the xylem and phloem are complex permanent tissues. These cells have been combined. They all look different to one another, but they all perform the same function. The vascular tissues form part of the plant transport system. As I said, you can compare them to the blood vessels of human beings. They are found in the root, stem, and the leaves. Starting off with the xylem. Xylem tissue are used for transporting water and dissolved mineral salts from the roots to the stem and the leaves. They also provide additional strength and support to the plant. They mainly consist of vessels and drachates. So the xylem tissues are used for transporting water. So they start off at the roots where they absorb the water and the mineral salts, transporting them to the stems and the leaf. They start off at the roots, they absorb the water and mineral salts. They go all the way up with them, taking them to the stem and the leaves. They consist of vessels and drachates. So xylem vessels are composed of straight, long, dead cells known as vessel elements. The vessel elements make up long tubes because the cells are arranged end to end. The xylem vessels have patterns of thickening in their secondary walls, which can be in the form of spirals or rings. The role of xylem vessels is to transport water from the roots to the leaves. So the xylem vessels are made up of vessel elements. These vessel elements are long tubes and they have patterns of thickening. They are used to transport water from the roots to the leaves. Then the xylem drachates have thick secondary walls which provide supports and are sealed at the ends such that they have no openings. The drachates link with one another, and since they have no openings, they have pairs of pits which allow the water to pass through horizontally from cell to cell. The xylem cells are often called dead cells because they do not have cytoplasm. This is because it is easier to transport water from cell to cell, as the cytoplasm would block the passage. So they are known as dead cells because they don't have cytoplasm. They do not have cytoplasm because it would block the passage of the water. It's much easier to transport the water without the cytoplasm. Let us summarize the xylem. The xylem is made up of xylem vessels and the xylem tracheids. The xylem vessels do have openings and they are arranged end to end. They transport water, and also the xylem tracheids transports water, but they have no openings such that they need to have pairs of pits that will allow the water to pass through. They are both known as dead cells because they do not have cytoplasm. The xylem itself transports water from the roots all the way up to the stems and the leaves. Then we have the phloem. The phloem looks like the xylem but is a bit more complex because it is not transporting something as simple as water. So what does the phloem transport? The phloem tissue is a living tissue and is responsible for transporting organic nutrients produced during photosynthesis, mainly the carbohydrates known as sucrose. The phloem is transporting organic nutrients from the leaves to the roots and the stems. It is made up of sieve tubes and companion cells. The sieve tubes are long cells with thin cell walls and are connected to one another for the transporting of sucrose. The companion cells have nuclei, which means many nucleus, to perform all of the metabolic activities of the phloem and provide energy needed to transport the sucrose. So summarizing our phloem is the opposite of the xylem. We said the xylem takes water from the roots to the leaves. Now we know that the phloem is transporting nutrients from the leaves because photosynthesis happens in the leaves and the nutrients are formed in the leaves, and then they are taken by the phloem to the roots where they provide the roots with these nutrients so that the roots can have energy to keep absorbing the water. And it is said that the phloem has sieve tubes and companion cells. The sieve tubes transport the sucrose. The companion cells have nucleus. The nucleus is responsible for metabolic activities that provide the energy for the transportation of sucrose. The sieve tubes cannot make their own energy. They require the companion cells to make the energy, and the sieve tubes take up the energy and is able to transport the sucrose.